So when we come across a word that we do not know, there are some strategies that we can use to figure out the meanings of those words. So what we're going to focus on right now are those strategies. So we come across a word that we don't know. The first thing that we need to do is not stop reading. So oftentimes when students are in school, they think, okay, I don't know this word, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to look it up in my dictionary or on my phone. And they look up the word. They look up the meaning of the word. What is wrong with looking up the meaning of the word when you don't know it?
You lose your place.
You lose your place, and what does that do?
Distracts you from all the other reading.
Okay? It's going to make you lose some of your comprehension. So when you lose focus because you've now taken yourself out of that environment and put yourself into something else, you're automatically going to lose some comprehension. So I want you to think of reading like exercise. Some people like it, some people don't. Sometimes it can be more intense and you can enjoy it more than other times. When you're going, you're reading and you're burning calories and you're enjoying it and your body is starting to feel the burn. But then you step off the treadmill and you go downstairs to McDonald's. Apparently. That's what happens when you stop reading and you access a dictionary, you access something else. You are taking yourself out of that situation, and now you're going to gain back all those calories that you just burned off. And then when you try to get back on that treadmill, my son, he's a runner, so he was talking last night about his experiences with applesauce. Apparently he ate applesauce one time before he ran. So you can imagine where the applesauce ended up. So he'll never eat applesauce again because of his experience. It's the same thing. You leave that reading and you're going to lose some comprehension. Instead, you need to use the context clues. So I'm going to teach you guys some strategies to use. This is one of those strategies. And then I'm going to teach you another strategy that you can use to understand the meaning of the word better. So the first part of this is using the sentence. You use the rest of the sentence. Sometimes this can be the sentence that comes before, sometimes it can be the sentence after, or sometimes it can be within the sentence to best judge the meaning. So oftentimes when authors are writing, they use strategies to help the readers understand the meaning of the word. So they can use synonyms. What are synonyms?
Mean the same.
Okay, words that are the same. So if I said the clues or hints, clues and hints mean the same thing. So that's a synonym. That tells you if you don't know what clues are, you know what hints are. If you don't know what hints are, you know what clues are. So those are synonymous with one another. Sometimes authors use antonyms. What are antonyms? Okay, the words that mean the opposite. So if I said the aggressive kid was unlike his gentle sister. Aggressive opposes, and we see that with the unlike gentle. So they are opposite. Oftentimes, if it's something that is a more complicated term that you can't use a synonym with, the author will give the meaning of the word. So that's the definition. It's just the meaning of the word. I was telling my students earlier about noodling. So noodling, which is fishing underwater with only your and
They do it with catfish.
and
Dig in the hole and pull the catfish out there. Yeah.
When you get bit,
yes, but they don't have teeth. They have stingers and really, really strong jaws. So
you get stung.
Yeah,
you do get stung, but you can use the catfish skin, and that's what I was actually talking about. So I was talking about the first time I went noodling was with my
You
kid's
went?
dad. Yeah, I've been noodling a lot.
Have you really?
Yep.
Wow.
I had to
So-
run in bed because I got fed today.
So we went noodling in Bug Tussle, Kentucky, and then I stuck my hand down there and grabbed the catfish. So the catfish grabbed me actually. So I pulled the catfish out and processed the catfish stung me. But then I learned that you can use the skin of the catfish to kind of heal up that sting and make it stop hurting. So that's what we were talking about. So my students were like, noodling, what are you talking about? You can't use a synonym for noodling. You have to explain it, and it requires a definition, and it requires a lot more. So sometimes when you come across a word that you don't know, there's a definition that's tied to it. So those work really well, but we also have examples. Examples are they're examples, or they're circumstances. Circumstances, just kidding. That show the meaning of the word. So, an example of this, one of my favorite examples of all things that are wrong with the world. If I were talking about and I were trying to define or give an example of, let me think of a nicer word than the ones that I would want to use. So I'm talking about a concept of a wasted life. Or, no, wasted ambition. There we go. So I'm talking about wasted ambition, and I talk about my brother, who is extremely smart, but uses his skills for evil instead. Well, good. And ends up in jail. Often. So that is an example of wasted ambition. So this is an example. My brother, he's really smart. He can invent things. He can do a lot of stuff. He can make things, create things, but he uses them to, okay, 5th grade, my brother took a pen apart and he created a bong out of a pen. That'll get you kicked out of 5th grade. Don't do that. So it's kind of wasted ambition. He could have made something more productive. When we were in school, 6th grade, he had my mom's dollhouse lights that he tied to his shoe. So every time he walked, they were lighting up. Fast forward 15 years and they have lights on the bottoms of shoes. It's a wasted ambition. He ended up getting in trouble for the bong, so he wasn't able to patent his genius ideas. So that's a wasted ambition. That's an example.
Wait, so he created the
Lights on shoes?
Yeah.
Yeah. His teacher, his version of Miss Paula, ooh, she was livid. Her name was Mrs. Blue. She was so mad. She was writing to the company that first started those. She was writing to them, my son, or my student, my former student had these, you should pay him. And I don't know who caught this, but she was so mad. He did a lot of stuff like that, and he's really good at that. He can invent.
So he probably would have had some money if he turned like that.
When in his time in jail, he gets paid a lot because he's also a wonderful artist, but he knows how to make ink for tattoos with jailhouse tools. So, yeah, what's that?
Stick bug.
He finds ink. It's really great. I mean, he's drawn some things for us that have been really awesome, but it's wasted ambition because now he has a police record a mile long. It's wasted ambition. That's what it boils down to. So the idea of context clues is that somewhere in this sentence there may be a clue that helps you understand and identify what the meaning of the word or words are, and the concept sometimes. So does every sentence have context clues for words? Many of them do, especially in academic writing. However, there may be words that you're just not familiar with because they're not something that you say on a regular basis. So the next step is looking at word parts. So when we talk about word parts, we're talking about roots, prefixes, and suffixes. So this is kind of like figuring out the meaning of things by dissecting the pieces themselves. So let me give you guys one choice, of course. Let me give you guys a list of roots, prefixes, and suffixes. Now this is not the only list by any means, but this will give you a start. And if I gotta find one more. So when we come across a word that we don't know, if we cannot decipher the meaning of the word, Alex, did you pass those over?
Yeah.
If we cannot decipher the meaning of the word itself, then we can go to the word parts, and we can start to take the words apart to figure out if we know the meaning. One more short or two?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So when you can't figure it out, you start to take the word apart. Now when we look at these word parts, you can start to pick up some concepts with word parts the more familiar you are with language, and the more familiar you are with the parts of language. So when I was in high school, I took French and Spanish for 4 years. So I learned language fairly quickly and easily because I had so much practice with it. So when we look at word parts, we have 3 different parts, 3 different pieces. So the first part of a word is looking at what we call a prefix. So a prefix can be at the beginning of the word, and it essentially changes the meaning of a word. So if you see R-E in front of a word, what does that mean? Do over. Good. So the meaning of that is to do over. What are some examples of words that have re that means do over?
Remix.
Remix.
Redo.
Redo.
Rework.
Rework. Reinvent.
Retire.
Retire. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Remake.
What's that?
Remake.
Remake. Good. So invent means to create, right? Invent is what we call the root of the word. So this is the root. This is the prefix of the word. So does every word have to have a root, a base?
Oh yeah, it's the base.
It's the base. Every word has to have a base. So you can't just say re. That doesn't work by itself. You can say invent by itself, but you can't say re by itself.
Hey, what about recall?
That's proper noun, so that's a little bit different. So reinvent means something different from just invent. So invent means to create, to make, and then re in front of it is do it over again. So the last part of this is looking at the end of a word. The end of a word is what we call the suffix. So right now we have a verb, reinvent. So it's doing something, it's inventing something again. But what if I do this? So this is my suffix. So reinvent is an action, but reinvention is what?
To reinvent.
Okay, so what part of speech is it? It's not a verb anymore. That's a verb.
Adjective.
That would be describing something. That would be describing something.
No.
Good. It becomes a noun. So a reinvention is a thing. I was trying to think of a book that I have on hand. Nope, I don't have any. So I had a student last hour. She had Romeo and Julio. It's a reinvention of Romeo and Juliet. So it's a different version. So this ION at the end of a word makes it into a noun. So what if this was my word? What does the ED do now? It's a past tense verb. So the suffix is at the end of the word, and it can either change the job of the word or it can give it a specific type of meaning. Remember when you guys were doing the paint chips last week? What did you notice about the adverbs?
They all ended in ly.
Most of them ended in ly. So ly makes it an adverb. Ed typically makes it past tense. When I put an S on something, what does that often do?
Present tense.
It can make it present tense or it can make something plural. So flowers, carriers, makes it plural. What about ing? Okay, what kind of action?
Present.
Okay, we call that progressive. It's a progressive verb. So it's something going on right now. So going, hearing, seeing. So on this sheet that you guys have, there are prefixes, roots, and suffixes. Some of the popular prefixes are listed. There are some bases of words that will help you across the board. And then there are some suffixes listed. The suffixes listed, the prefixes listed, they are not the end-all and be-all of prefixes, roots, and suffixes. It just gives you a start. So out of these three things, which one does every word have to have?
A base.
Every word has to have a base or a root. Good.
What about a word like the?
The root is the. Okay. So if you dissect a word that you don't know, you can at least identify some parts of that word. So my students in English 2, their vocabulary words so far are annotations and annotating. So in these two words, they are both about notes and margins, but one of them means notes in the margin. One of them means taking notes in the margins. So typically, your suffixes are going to line up with the meanings. So I say annotating means taking, ing, notes in the margins. Annotations are notes in the margins. So if I have the word reinvented, created again. If I have reinventing, just like up here, inventing again, creating again. So your endings typically match up. So why would that be helpful to know? So I want your brains to explode while it would be amusing. This is helpful because you guys are going to come across words that you don't know. You're going to come across words that you maybe can get some context clues and understand the meaning of, but you're also going to come across words that you don't know, you don't understand, so you have to figure out those meanings. This is a strategy to help you figure out those meanings. What if you can't figure it out based upon these two things, the context clues or the roots, prefixes, and suffixes? What do you do now?
Google.
That's where you can bring in the dictionary. And by dictionary, yes, most of us Google things right now. So that's where you can take yourself out of it because you have attempted to dive into that word as much as possible. So if you can't get it using those strategies, yes, go to Google. They'll figure it out.
You know, I actually have a dictionary in my house.
Do you?
Yes, I do still have one.
Yep. Some of us still actually have paper dictionaries for books. They do. They do. They're at the dollar store, usually for 50 cents for $1.
I was big on
Good.
Goddamn it.
Yeah.
The college ones.
Yes. I like those a lot. And I do have some in the back, and I have some up here as well. We won't use them, but they are helpful. So as we look at these ideas, let's introduce your first vocabulary words for this week. So again, this is the literary term sheet that you will use for the rest of the term. And we are going to focus on the first two words. We are going to be skipping around here. So we will be using these two words today. We may not use the next set of words. I would ask that you guys not look these words up before we actually get to them. Because while they may have a lot of meanings, or some of them may have a single meaning, I want us to all be on the same page with the meanings of the words. So the first of these words is the word storyline. So the word storyline is actually a compound word. It's made up of two roots. So it's made up of two pieces. A storyline is what? What do you think a storyline is? Okay, what do you mean a line? A line in a story? Okay.
Like a sentence in a story.
Okay. Which sentence? Okay. That would be main idea. Okay. So I want you guys to think about storylines as the path a story takes. So a storyline, and on this top line here, write the path a story takes. So it's the path a story takes. So when we talk about storylines, there are some traditional storylines that a story follows. Looks something like this. So a story has to begin with what we call an exposition. So the exposition is the background of a story. So let's think about Cinderella. So in the story of Cinderella, we get a couple of sentences, we get a little bit of information about her relationship with her dad. And she and her dad were very close. They had a very close relationship. And her dad married her stepmom, and shortly thereafter, he died. that is the exposition. So at some point, a conflict is introduced. So what was the conflict that was introduced in Cinderella's story? What happens? What's the first bad thing that happens? Her dad dies. So that introduces a conflict. As a result of her dad dying, other things start to happen. And that is called the rising action. So because her dad dies, she is forced to live with her stepmom. Because she's forced to live with her stepmom, she lives with her stepsisters. Because she and her stepmom and stepsisters live together, her stepmom treats her badly. Because her stepmom treats her badly, she is forced to do things like cleaning house. What happens to her? What does she want to do?
Go to the ball.
Okay, because she wants to go to the ball, her stepmom and stepsisters create a series of problems. So they make a house a mess, they rip up the dress that she was going to wear, they do all these mean things. And because of that, she eventually breaks down and she's just done. She's so upset, she's mad. And then the climax of the piece happens. So this is where that last little bit comes into the climax. And the climax is with Godmother. So she meets Godmother, who then says, here's all the stuff you need, go to the ball. So she gets to go to the ball until midnight. And then midnight happens. And then we get this section here is called the falling action. So as a result of her going to the ball and falling in love with the prince, he starts a quest to look for her. Because he's looking for her, he's searching the entire kingdom. Because he's searching the entire kingdom, he does go to her house. She is there, but the sisters are there. So the sisters try on the shoes. No luck at all.
They cut their toes off to fit in the shoe.
They do. They do some pretty horrible stuff. And then we get to the resolution.
And then happy ever.
And the resolution is that they live happily ever after. Yes. So this is a storyline. This is not the storyline that every story follows, but this is an example of a storyline. So it's just the path that the story takes. Any questions? Go ahead.
Or some of them read it kind of backwards, aren't they? They let you know what happened first.
Yep.
And then they go in the details. I can't remember what it's called, but I just read it.
So, Butterfly Effect is a really great movie, but it's all about the flashbacks. So you get very short exposition, and then the conflict, but this rising action is back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. And every time you go there, that conflict, it changes. So yes, absolutely. Sometimes we start here, and then we go back here. Any of those are appropriate storylines. This is the most common. This is the one that is taught at every level most of the time because it's the most basic. So the next vocabulary word that you guys have is the word setting. So what is setting? Okay? So it is, and this is what most students end up forgetting. Setting is the time and the place of the story. So it's the time and the place of a story. So how many of you have ever been here on a Friday? What's it like around here on Friday?
Hard to get in the building.
Okay. It's very hard to get in a building on a Friday. You stand there and you buzz, buzz, buzz. Or if you're Brandon McClish, you text Mrs. Warner and say, please open the door.
I'll
So-
remember that one.
Wait, there's no security guard on Friday?
No, no. So, but students, we often are in meetings, so students will stand in the front door and buzz, buzz, buzz. What happens when you get in the building? It's quiet. It's very quiet around here on Fridays. The most that you usually hear is Miss Emily's laugh. She's that big laugh.
Miss Nikki.
Sometimes you hear Miss Nikki. So even though the place is the same, because the time and the day is different, it makes a big difference. Think about Kokomo, Indiana at 2 o'clock in the afternoon versus 2 o'clock in the morning. Very different places. Okay? Even though the place itself may be the same, the setting is so different because of that time. Think about 7 o'clock 2 weeks ago, 7 p.m. 2 weeks ago versus 7 p.m. now. Yeah, it's really, really dark. So there are time and place pieces that make a really big difference. So why is it important for an author to go into a lot of detail on setting? Why would that be important?
Because it creates the best atmosphere if you get the most detail.
Okay, so the reader feels like, hey, I'm part of this, the more detail that is included. That it doesn't always make us feel like we're a part of it, but at least we can start to get a picture in our mind of what the environment is like. I like to go to a lot of concerts. So Brad Paisley concert is very different from a Megadeth concert. It's an atmosphere. It's a lot of...
You've been to both?
Missed the Willie Nelson concert a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we were on to go.
And there's a big difference between Klipsch and 8 Second Saloon. Big difference between Center Stage, or whatever it's called this week, and the Honeywell Center. I went to a concert at the Honeywell Center, Darius Rucker, and it was amazing, and he was right there, and it was awesome. Yeah, Center Stage, you can be that close, but you're gonna get like sweat and gross stuff on you. It's way cleaner at Honeywell Center. It's a very different environment. My husband was like, I don't like this. It's weird. They're too clean for me. Didn't feel very comfortable with it. All right, so those are your 2 vocabulary words for this week. And those are 2 words that I want you guys to think about as we start to go into our stories and really focus in on what it is that you guys are going to be reading for your novels. I am going to put these words over there. I have to figure out how I'm going to separate those 2 because those are the words for the other class. So you will not... Go ahead.
Make it blue. Yeah, make ours blue.
Yeah.
Make it red.
I don't know if they will be able to distinguish between those 2 things. I don't want them to do this stuff. Yeah.
Or say period 2.
I may just get a piece of duct tape and just tape it.
Or you put period 1 and then period 2 or 5.
I could do that, maybe. So you will have a vocabulary quiz. You will have 2 words today, 2 words tomorrow, 1 word on Wednesday, and then a test over all 5 on Thursday. With the test, you will not have to worry about spelling these words. You will just have to worry about the concepts, the ideas that we've talked about.
Well, spelling was easy.
Yeah, it is on this one, not later on when we get into some other ideas. All right, any questions on vocab? You guys want to take a quick break? Or you think you're good?
I'm gonna have a break.
Just come in. Okay, let's go ahead and review these active reading strategies very quickly, and then we will get started on a reading, and then we'll take a break. Does that work? Before we start reading. All right, so really quickly, let's review each of these areas. I would again encourage you guys to take some notes. This you will be tested on. So I would suggest that you take plenty of notes and make sure that you're ready with this information. So the first part of reading strategies is what we do before. So we always want to look at the title of the piece. Why do we care about the title?
Because we want to
Okay? It tells you a little bit about what the topic may be. So if I have a piece called Living in Italy, what do you think it's going to be about?
Ew. Canada?
Yep.
No,
You
man.
think it's going to be about living in Italy. You know that it's probably going to be about that topic. Is that always accurate? No. Is that always specific enough that we understand? No. The novel Night, a lot of students really struggle with that. They're like, night, what does that mean? Is it nighttime? Is it night this? Is it night that? They don't understand because it's not very clear. The Diary of Anne Frank. What do you think that's about?
Anne Frank's diary.
Anne Frank's diary. We don't know necessarily who she is. We don't necessarily know what she's writing about or why we care, but we realize that it's probably the Diary of this girl. Good. What about the author? What do you find out with the author's information or the author's name? What does that tell you?
Who they are?
Okay. It gives you who they are, and then what do you do with that information?
Possibly something about them.
Okay? It may give you a clue because of your prior knowledge. So you may be able to connect with that because you already know something about that author. So if I said we're going to read Shakespeare, reaction?
No.
No.
Cricket.
Yeah.
I'll get the movie.
Okay. So not a lot of happy faces. But if I said we're going to read John Donne, what do you think? Don't know what that is. So you can't gauge your reaction necessarily if you don't know who the author is. But if you know who the author is, sometimes you go into it with a bias. What about J.K. Rowling? Okay, so we're going to read the newest piece by J.K.
I
Rowling.
still don't know who that is.
I know. Better than Shakespeare.
I'd be a little more excited than Shakespeare.
Okay, so that's the author of Harry Potter series. So if you like the Harry Potter series, you're going, oh, okay, maybe. That's cool. There was an author, V.C. Andrews.
Oh, yeah. I'm old enough.
Okay.
I'm old enough.
So V.C. Andrews wrote the Flowers in the Attic series. So after she died, her family kept her name on the novels, and they just finished her writings. Why would they do that?
Carry on the legacy?
Carry on the legacy for her readers. So we were very dedicated to her as an author. So we continued reading because she was the author of those pieces. The style, even though it was slightly different, it was still her work and her ideas and her concepts, which were completely dark and twisted, which was awesome. Anne Rice. I was a big reader of Anne Rice. Christopher Pike. Those are people that I like to read. Very dark, kind of macabre. It's really interesting. So I like them because of their style of writing. You may know authors because of their style of writing. Is there a difference between 12 authors and one?
You mean one book?
No, 12 authors of one book or one piece and one author of a piece.
Yeah.
There's going to be differences. What kind of information is going to have more opinions?
The one with 12.
The one with 12. You just have 12 more people. Which one is probably going to be more fact-based versus opinion-based?
12.
Okay, and why do you say 12?
Because they have 12 opinions to make the information fact.
Okay,
Just
so you have 12 people who have to streamline their ideas and agree upon something before it's published. So that's going to eliminate a lot of those opinions because even though there are 7 of us in this room, we're all 7 going to have different opinions. So when we come to a consensus on something, it's probably going to be more factually based versus a single author who has complete and total control. Good. Previewing. So we read the first and last line or the sentence. We look at subheadings. So remember, subheadings are those sections, and within that section, it tells you, the subheading tells you what it's going to be about. So in my book, I have a subheading called discussion. What do you think everything in there is? It's discussion about the topic. I have a section called results. What do you think that is? Results. So the subheadings tell you what is going to be included in that section. What about bolded words? What kind of words are bolded?
Important ones.
Good. Important words are going to be bolded. Oftentimes, as you guys saw with your piece on civilization, we are from Africa, remember the vocabulary words were bolded. That's because those words are significant. They needed to stand out among the other words. Italicized words, we didn't talk too much about italicized words. They are important, but they're not as important as the bolded words. I want you to think of italicized words as the author whispering, hey, get this. It's important enough that the author wants to emphasize it and make it different from everything else, but it's not as impactful as those bolded words. We also look at pictures, charts, and graphs, anything that's included. Why do we care about those things? Why do we care about any pictures, charts, or graphs? Good. It's going to give you some more ideas about what the piece may be about. All this before stuff is to give you a hint as to what it is that you're going to be reading. It's just to give you a taste of that. So we talked about while we're reading, we chunk information. How do we chunk information? We don't read from the first one to the last one. What do?
Divide it up.
Go ahead.
Divide it up.
Divide it up into, what do authors already do for us so we can read it in? Paragraphs. Good. So we chunk the information in paragraphs. As we are chunking that information, we take notes. How do we annotate?
In the margins.
We write in the margins. What kind of things do we circle or underline?
Words.
Okay, do we need to circle or underline anything bolded already? They already stand out. So we need to make things stand out for us as the reader. Bolded already stands out. Things that are italicized already stand out. Numerals already stand out. Remember we talked about not circling things like 60,000 or 1944. So words that are repeated. Good. So we take notes. So we go through and we highlight things that are repeated. So remember on the We Are Africa piece, we circled Africa. Every time Africa was mentioned, we circled it. We also underlined people. So anytime people were mentioned, we, Homo sapiens, anytime those things were repeated, we underlined those. That helped us identify what the main idea was of that section. So we use those words to frame a summary off to the side. So afterwards, we have the think, write, and discuss. What do we think about? What is it that we have to think about? After you read a passage, what do you need to think about? Okay, do you want to think about everything that you read? Which stuff? The stuff that you learned. So when you're thinking about it, think about the stuff that you didn't already know. So how many of you, before we started talking about noodling, how many of you already knew what noodling was? Okay, so if you already knew what it was, you have that somewhere in your brain. You don't need to add to that. You don't need to write it down. You think about the things that you learned. So we talked about this last week. Tom, what was it that you said that you didn't know before? You remember? We are from Africa. I said the land bridge. So I didn't know about the land bridge before, the secret.
The second.
I didn't know humans almost went extinct once.
Okay, so that was something you learned. And just by discussing it, Beachy remembers it. So because we think about things that we learned and then we discussed it with people who had also read the piece, but we also should discuss it with people who haven't read the piece. So we will also write a quick summary. We talked very briefly about the summary because we're going to spend more time on it as we go. But I want you guys to get into the habit of practicing with these things. As we do this think, write, and discuss after we read, it's to help us solidify our knowledge. So we access what we already know about the topic, or what we think we know about the topic. We learn some stuff, and then we reflect on what it is that we learned. That is the way that we start getting those neurons firing off. So we have to practice with those ideas. Okay, guys, I want you to take 10 minutes, come back at 5 after, and then we will start reading.